Good morning, Warriors. Back with another episode of Vigor Warriors 2 on the Vigor Warriors channel 2. I am Vigor Warriors 2. Hope you guys are doing well. I'm doing a special one today. And we're going to kind of talk about the idea of chakras and the fountain of youth. And really kind of just things that are just general types of things we want to kind of keep in mind as we are trying to kind of become the best person we become. I see a lot of things on television and radio talking about different things that people do. I was watching something on betting the other day and how much people get into betting and gambling and all this kind of stuff. And once again, behaviors become addictive. And the question becomes, is it something good for you or bad for you? And yes, I'm sure some people are very good in betting. I don't bet anymore. I couldn't control it when I was doing it many years ago, and so I stopped doing it. And I think this is the key that is hard for people. Some people cannot stop. Now, it's probably, these professional gamblers and what they would have called are probably really good at it and probably make money on it. But remember that the house, they don't want you to win. I mean, they make money by you losing. Now, they may have you win a little bit, and maybe give the opportunity to win, because what you have is basically drawing you in to actually do more and more and more. And I always remember the case of my dad being over in Vegas, and one time, he won some money, but then right at the door, they have all these solicitors, women and men and things, different types of things they could buy for your money. So they didn't want you to get out of that building alive without spending all that money. So what happens is that you come in with money, and you spend money, and you make some money, maybe, and then you spend it again. So really, what are you really doing? Now, people go into it just for the experience, and that's fine, but just remember that every time you're doing something, you're being tempted, and how you handle that makes a big difference. Now, before I start sounding like a old fuddy-duddy, used to call in the old days, I enjoy having fun and doing a lot of fun things. But I think the difference, again, goes back to this whole idea of the thrill. And when people gamble, it's the same thing as they do when they lose energy. They do exciting types of events, things like this. There's a certain adrenaline we get. And those who've played sports, you see that too. There's a certain adrenaline you get from playing sports. And when you end up having that thrill, the excitement of that's something that continues to go on, right? And those are the kind of key things you look at and realize as you're doing that. So I think as we talk about this, it's important to know this. That's really important to kind of look at how you're really kind of handling a lot of that type of stuff. And I think that's the key type of thing to look at when you're looking at any sort of thing that gives you excitement. Now, I'm not saying, once again, you cannot have excitement in your life. But what I'm saying is that you really want to kind of watch how far that goes. And if the thrill becomes more important than the actual thing, well, then you have a definite problem. And this is what happens a lot with people losing energy. Now, we talk about the fountain of youth a little bit, and we talk about the idea that it's important to understand what this is all about. Now, I started reading this book in 1998, and I know we've done a couple videos on this, but I want to kind of go back to this idea a little bit. I found this at just going through one of these antique stores. I don't know if it was a Goodwill or it's a Red Cross or something like that, or some of these, thrift shops, something like that. And I found this book, and I was very interested in this. Now, this person had talked about the fact that they were, probably in their 60s or something like that at the time, and they really felt like they wanted to live a long time. Now, that's the first thing you have to kind of think about. You will achieve these goals if you want to live a long life. Unless something happens that God intervenes and gives you a different plan that you're meant to have. Most of the time, if you're sitting there saying, okay, my goal is to live to 100, and you realize what that is, then you're able to kind of do those type of things over time. And I think that God gave me this book realizing that this is something that he wants me to look at for a number of reasons, not only for my own health, because I was having trouble at the time. There's a time I was probably in the mid-30s, something like that, and I was struggling. I had a lot of football injuries earlier than that, and they were taking the toll, and I had a lot of stress and a lot of weight and a lot of bad behaviors and things like that, and so I wasn't the best in shape. And so because of that, what's happening is that I was looking for some answers. The doctor was saying, you have hypertension, you're stressed out, all kinds of stuff like that. And so I really got interested in this book because this person went to the tribes in Tibet. This is back in China, before China took over, and back in the 40s, something like that, I think it was. And he was looking for the fountain of youth. And he thought it was going to be some kind of miracle drug or something like that. And what he found, and when he came back to report, was the fact that there was a set of exercises, things dealt with the chakras. The chakras are these spinning types of forces within you. And if you take so going back to physics a little bit, we're made of matter and energy. And we know that if you kind of study any kind of physics or things like that. And because we're made of energy, matter cannot be destroyed. It can just be recreated. So that's why I think that, we pass from different entities to another. And we, those go into heaven, I believe, with God. And, this is kind of different transitional periods of time. But when it comes to the chakras, you can actually speed those up or slow those down. And the chakras happen because they are part of, you have the brain, the reproductive glands, all kinds of stuff like that. And this is where it's important to kind of do these kind of exercises to kind of stimulate those type of things. And so those type of exercises you do will stimulate. Now, I've gone through the exercises, and perhaps if you guys are interested, I'll go back and please refer back to that one about the exercises, but I can show you the book and go through the exercises again if people are really interested in that. But the thing is that when we look at this, it's important to realize that you're trying to have the chakras speed up. You're not trying to have them slow down. When they slow down, this is when people stop having activities, they stop doing different things with these energy sources, and that's when they die, because they eventually slow down. And so you can continue to keep them going as long as you can. I mean, eventually, we're all going to pass away. I think the oldest person's 120 some years old, something like that. Eventually we will pass away, but your drive and desire to find these answers and to look at this has helped me a long time in the last 25 years to actually become a more healthier and happy person. I can just say now that I'm 10 times healthier and in better shape and feeling better than I did back in 1998. So the book has helped a great deal, and I certainly recommend the Fountain of Youth books by Kendler to anybody who wants to read them. But you have to kind of believe that chakras exist, and I think because of this law of energy, you know that there's things there, and that we are moving into different directions based on who we are. Now, these exercises are very important to do. I try to do them every day. I may miss a day or so here and there, and that's not a big issue, but it is important to kind of go ahead and do that. And along with nutrition, which last night I had a big meal and it wasn't so good last night and I was feeling it, but it is actually something that you have to kind of look at as well, because nutrition plays a big part in this. And the other thing that plays a big part is the exercises. But then the last exercise, which is something I could not master for 20 some years, was the idea of celibacy. And basically he had said that the other exercises will continue to keep your reproductive chakra and the ones in those areas and everything else moving fast. And that will continue to give you a drive. And you'll notice that if you have a lot of water, or you'll notice that if you get into a relaxed state, that you'll still have, sexual energy. You could feel it, right? You can feel it if you see something or that kind of stuff, right? You see a girl or you see a guy and you're attracted, you'll feel that. So you still have it. And it's important to have it before you're doing the transmuting of it. But certainly, I think you don't want to get to the point where you're ever, going back to the relapsing and things like that, and getting into an addictive type of state with it. But like anything else, no matter if it's betting or anything else, you could very easily get into addictive state if you don't take steps to watch that. And so as we look at this whole idea of the fountain of youth, it is key to realize that you are building those chakras. Now, how does that impact, our journey? Well, the reason why this is the sixth right, and this is something that's kind of important to kind of look at, is that it allows you to continue your energy flow, but you're now transmuting or moving that flow into other productive areas in your body or your life. So the idea that you're using energy that would normally happen down by your reproductive system and your chakra, now that energy, right, is being moved around. And these exercises actually help you do that. And that's why I recommend these 6 exercises, the 5, and then the 6th one is obviously the one we're doing on our retention plan. So the fountain of youth thing that's been used by the Tibet, monasteries back in the 40s and the early 50s, were able to really kind of keep people living for a long time. And some of the people lived for 100 years old, 110, 20 years old. And when you see a lot of these stories about people living to 120 and 25, I think it was, you'll see a lot of them practice brahmacharya. They practice sophism. They practice a lot of things we're talking about, and they haven't had intercourse in many, many years, right? Maybe they had if they had children way back when, but they haven't had that in a long, long time. And so, they're not dying of prostate cancer. They're not dying of this other kind of stuff that people talk about when they create the fear. And guys, you have to realize again, and this is something that I think the world is becoming more aware of, but everybody, when they present news, and I studied this when I was a journalism major back in college, and I did a little work for newspapers and things like that, you realize that everything has a slant to it. No matter who's presenting it, it has a slant to it. And so when it has a slant to it, you have to realize what that slant is. And a lot of people don't. They think if they see the news that it has to be totally accurate and unbiased. And there was times that people did go out and make news unbiased. But that doesn't happen. Very rarely. More times than not, and this goes all the way back to the 1840s when it comes to newspapers, things like that. All this stuff has a biased tone to it based on the biases of the editor or the people who run the newspaper or the TV station and things like that. To not think that's the case, you have to kind of really just look at what's happening and view a bunch of stations and realize this. But people get into a habit of not thinking. They just watch and they kind of just bring things in. And this is how people get addicted, whether it's television programming, whether it's drugs, whether it's pornography, what it might be. They get addicted to this stuff, and before they know it, they can't control it. And this is the type of thing that happens. And most people who think they're not going to be able to be controlled by it, they're the ones that get caught first, because they're kind of ignorant to the fact that you have as a human being this mechanism that wants you to follow patterns and orders. And so if you don't stop this, you'll continue to kind of fall for the same type of stuff, and you'll be addicted to it. So I think it's important to recognize the importance of the fountain of youth. I think that at my age, because I'm 60, it's obviously more prevalent to me than a lot of you younger viewers that we have out there. But these are great habits to start when you're younger. And what they're going to do for you is make you a stronger person, no matter if you're 20, 30, 40, 50, or 60 like myself. And I think the key, what you really want to do, is to recognize that these things can help you. Now, the exercises themselves, they also they help you with your balancing your weight and doing all those type of things to help you from a weight standpoint. Obviously, your food intake, those things make a big difference. But if you do these exercises and you're out there doing things, you're not going to gain that much weight, and you'll always kind of back to an equilibrium at some point when it comes to your weight. And this is very, very important when it comes to your health and things like that. The chakras will keep moving along And just remember that if you don't use it, you end up kind of going through atrophy and you lose it. I always go back, and I know I've said this a few times, but I go back to that crazy show that I watched with my kids when they were younger, called the Willy Wonka movie, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, I believe it was. And there's such a great scene that just epitomizes what I'm talking about here. These parents were sitting there in bed, and they had been in bed for 8 years or 7 years, whatever it might be, and they just could not move because they hadn't used their muscles in 8 years. And if you don't use your muscles, you tend to go through atrophy. And you can see that. And this is just a great example of that. Now, they use it as kind of a comical example, but it really makes a lot of sense because you see it all the time. When I go to the YMCA, I go to different places, I'm so impressed with people in their 70s and 80s, and they're weightlifting and working out and using the muscles. They're not afraid. And I think this goes back to the whole key to the whole thing, is that you have to kind of step out and realize that there's things that can make you better. And that just because you're getting older doesn't necessarily mean that you can't still do a lot of things you're doing. Now, a lot of you younger people, you're going to not even know what I'm talking about because you're going to feel so strong, and you rightfully so. You know, you'll be okay. But there's going to come a time for all of us, no matter how old you are, you're going to realize that you need to continue to keep working. You may start your job, and all of a sudden now you got to get into exercising, and you lose exercising. You finish school, and now you're getting a job, and now you're stressed out, or you're starting a family, you're stressed out. I went through a lot of those type of things, and at some level you realize that one of the most important things in life is a balance, and you have to kind of keep that balance and not get very stressed out when things are not going well around you, which they invariably will, because life is really full of ups and downs, and you have to kind of manage both of those the same way, as we talked about in that one poem by Rudyard Kipling. So anyway, it's an interesting type of thing to talk about, and I think I'm not as rushed today. I got to do a little bit of work in the morning here, but I'm not as rushed, and so it's nice to kind of do a video that is not your morning talk one. So once again, talking about the Fountain of Youth, and realizing that these concepts are real, the chakras are real, and that you need to kind of think about how you're going to approach things, no matter if you're in your 20s and you have the stress of a job, family, things like that. You're in your 30s trying to get promoted, do different types of things. You're in your 40s, you're trying to kind of figure out maybe what's the next step of what I'm going to do. All those type of things happen to all of us, and they will happen to you at one point or another as well. So, all right, my friends, you have a nice weekend. I may do another one if I get the chance, but I wanted to kind of touch base and just tell you guys how much I appreciate all the likes, comments, donations. You guys are the best. I'm glad that some of this information is helping, and we will talk very soon. So until next time, guys, God bless you, warriors, and battle on.